So, how do the fastest growing architecture, engineering, and construction firms, how do they do it? How are they growing faster? What is their growth strategy? How are they spending their marketing dollars? To answer these questions and more, I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Karl Feldman, managing partner at Hinge. How you doing, Karl?
Doing great. How are you, Austin?
I'm doing great. And Katie Pultz, managing director here at Hinge. How are you?
I'm great, Austin. Thanks.
Yeah, my name's Austin, senior marketing manager here at Hinge, and I have assembled the dream team here in terms of our AEC experience. Karl and Katy work with just about all of our AEC firms that Hinge has worked with, and I would say, between the two of you, you guys have 20 plus, way more years of experience working with those clients. And recently, you've been huge contributors to the recent edition of the High Growth Study. This is the 10th edition of Hinge's High Growth Study, and specifically the edition on AEC firms. So I'm excited to talk with you guys today and get some of your thoughts about what we learned from the fastest growing companies in the industry. You guys ready?
Ready?
All right, let's dive in. You've written a blog post here kind of summarizing some of the key findings in the industry. We measured a number of different AEC firms this year were able to participate. I think it was over 200 in the total sample size. And really, what we do in the heart of this research is we try to understand what are the fastest growing firms in these industries doing. And this year, Karl, we saw that it was the high growth firms were growing 4.6 times faster than their slower growing peers. So, I mean, what do you make of that just from the get out?
I'll say that is one of the biggest trends we identified in the last year, last 2 years, is that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is accelerating. We've seen, and we'll talk about some of the trends that we see that, feed into that, but the investment in technology infrastructure and training, in building out a very clear messaging strategy or an intentional practice around marketing and business development in AEC. The firms that did that through the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, they are applying these techniques to devastating effect on their competitors. Not to mention that we have some other trends that are feeding into the growth just overall, a continued drive on mergers and acquisitions, a roll up, some of that being fueled by natural retirement for certain generations in our industry. All of those things to come together along with technology like generative AI. There's a lot of disruptors happening, and that's fueling growth for those that are focused on the pieces that really matter. So this is we hope anybody listening, anybody in the industry that would like to talk to us, there's a great opportunity in that disruption. It's not just, fear and uncertainty. There are firms that have cracked the code and that have a pure focus on making the most of this disruption. So we hope that all of our listeners are on the have side of that equation.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the main drivers there, it's mentioned in the research quite a bit, but a big part of this growth, a lot of it is organic growth. Some of it, though, is growth that's coming through a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And Katie, I know that you're working with a lot of clients right now where M&A is a big um, component of what's happening at the firm, and there's a lot of branding and marketing challenges that follow from that. Are you seeing kind of in the most recent years that these trends and kind of challenges around M&A are accelerating?
Yeah, I think a lot of firms are trying to figure out what they can do to kind of set themselves apart from that sea of competition that keeps appearing. And that's actually some of the key insights that were pulled out from this year's study is what can they do to really kind of stand out and set themselves apart.
Yeah, I couldn't think of a better segue, Katie, because what I really want to talk to you about is, we ask a lot of questions in the high growth study, everything from, what components are a part of every high growth firm's marketing program. Where are they seeing impact? Where's the best return on investment? All of that is captured in the full study of the report. Where I wanted to zero in for our conversation today, though, was about the top priorities for 2025. So we asked those fast growing AEC firms, out of this full list. I mean, I think there's over 20 options they could have selected, and they were allowed to select three. And we asked them, what are the top priorities for you in your marketing program in 2025? I want to read off this list, and then I'd like to dive into each of them. Number one on the list, brand differentiation, followed by developing thought leaders and then creating content. Carl, Katie just kind of opened up the conversation there, mentioning the differentiation word. There it is at the top of the list as the top marketing priority for 2025. And this is specifically for AEC firms. Other industries did not have these same results. So we're seeing brand differentiation right now really being a top priority in the industry. What do you make of that?
I think it's the perfect time to make sure that you're staying focused on that with an intentional system. Brand differentiation, especially in the AEC industry, is a hefty challenge. I mean, across professional services, there are a lot of really talented, really strong teams. Some can speak better about that than others. Some can articulate their value more clearly than others. But it's really a combination of all of those things. Can you articulate? Do you have the scale and reach to get that out there? But it starts with good research, good understanding about your audiences. What is keeping them up at night? How does that intersect with the solutions that your team, your group brings to the table? And how can you create visibility for those things? If you think of, marketing, and then connecting to business development, in the best scenario, that is an intentional and carefully considered process that is being measured from the beginning. Oftentimes I'll have conversations with folks that, the discussion about differentiation, it takes kind of a creative tone, and there is a creative aspect to it, but it is ultimately measurable, just like everything else. Are you commanding a space to a point where you're not as much of a commodity, right? Are you not just saying the words innovative and a trusted advisor, but are you walking that talk, and can you prove it, and can you point to the impact of that? Trends today, I mean, with AI and some of the production that enables, and creativity. Actually, Austin, you and I have given some webinars and speaking events where I forget how we coined the term, the sea of beige. That's a thing, right? There is a lot of just mass quantity of things that sound really good, but when you start to pick it apart, they're beige. It's the norm. I mean, we at Hinge ourselves, like, we use our AI agents, tools, what have you, really primarily to identify the norm, to do production work, those types of things. But the creativity, the focus, the intentionality behind differentiation, that has to come from the audiences and strategic leadership within AEC firms. A lot easier to say than do, but there is a process and a path to get there. And when it clicks, you can see it in billable rates. You can see it in the types of conversations you're having in business development, that you have taken a spot and owned it, and are able to drive out of that beige commodity land.
So, Katie, I think there's a thread with brand differentiation that's also kind of relates to the way companies express themselves visually, their websites, the video, the photography that they show, kind of in their marketing and business development materials, including their website, as I mentioned. What have you seen kind of in the evolution recently of architecture? Maybe they're more on the stronger end of expressing themselves visually versus like maybe engineering firms, they're probably catching up a little bit more in this space. What are you seeing in terms of how these companies are differentiating themselves with their visual identity?
I think For clients across the board, especially the high growth firms, are really setting themselves apart by investing in, what they're doing with their websites, what they're doing with their materials. And you're right, more and more architecture firms especially are concerned with, are we putting our best work out there? Are we incorporating people into our imagery and photos on our website? Because at the end of the day, we're professional services. We're about the people themselves and the expertise that they bring. So if you're going to a website and you're only seeing generic stock footage of, these projects that you're working on, as opposed to real project photography. If you're seeing those things without any human element involved in them, I think they're missing the mark a little bit.
Katie, I can think of a perfect example. It was a competitor website that we were reviewing for a client. So this is not one of our clients, but
Mhm.
and it's not the first time we've seen this. But you always love when you go to the careers page and there's a section on diversity, and the diversity picture is some stock image of
Mhm.
people of mixed races and stuff like that. It's like I'm not sure that showing a stock photo is the best way to just tell people that you're expressing diversity. You should actually show your real people. If that is
Mhm.
something that you want to that you're proud about, that you're expressing on your website, it's the trend, it's the direction that your organization is heading. Show people that. Don't put up a stock imagery. There's
Right.
there's there's like a lot of factors there that I think as marketers we have to think about because of
Mhm.
course the intersection there is how do we attract top talent to our organization?
Mhm.
And so if that
Mhm.
is a piece that you wanna highlight it authentically. Don't just throw up stock pictures of people having fun in the office. Like, that's not gonna break through in the way that you want.
Right. People want to see themselves, the idea of themselves, picture themselves working at your firm, being an employee there. So if they're not getting that experience from what you're showing on your website, or any of your materials for that matter, again, you're missing the mark.
Well, Katie, you've brought up, the topic of the people, right? And that was kind of what our second point was about, which is the priority of developing thought leaders. I'll tell you guys a secret in terms of the high growth study. This has been in the high growth study, this is the 10th consecutive edition that we released this year. But it was the first time, believe it or not, that on this list of top marketing priorities that we had added in developing thought leaders. We had some other categories that said things similar to that, but we really, when we've talked with our clients, that piece about developing thought leaders stood out to us. So we added it in this year for the first time. And so not only is this finding itself in the top of the list, but I mean, the first time it was an option, it found itself at the top of the list. I think it just speaks to just how important and central it is in the industry, like you said, Katie. Carl, anything you'd add there in terms of the developing of the thought leaders being kind of number two on the priority list, or that piece on like brand differentiation and how those two connect?
Absolutely. I think, my perspective, I go across the different verticals that we serve and the different practice areas. AEC specifically has been a little bit of a laggard in terms of picking up the whole intentional thought leadership drive, what's often called content marketing, or the different aspects of that. So, Austin, like you described, adding that option in there was really part of a progression from here's the overall technique to what are the elements of it that are missing. And that training of the experts, the setting up for the quality of that content through intentional training programs, that's been a real push. And I mean, we could all tell you there are some challenges there. They're unique to engineering, science, how to best position that kind of content for the audiences that are actually reading it. It's a we have engineers or scientists that say, I can't write at this level. I can't write in this way to speak to this position. I have to include all of the details, the tech, this. My colleagues would laugh me out of the room. So making that point and being able to bring back the impact, like the return on that effort, is crucial to a sustainable program, especially in technical professional services, which they may be some of your most powerful experts. And I'd be willing to bet for listeners thinking of your team, there are some of them that have some natural tendency to walk both paths. They can speak real technical, and they can also explain that to your grandmother. Those are folks that may really benefit the whole program, the whole system with that halo, if they're focused right.
I was just going to add too, when we think about visible expertise, we always think about kind of these three pillars, right? One is the speaking skills associated with that, writing, and then networking. And I think what a lot of people don't seem to grasp right up front is that you don't have to be good at all three. We usually recommend you focus on at least two of them. But what is very easy for someone to do in terms of speaking at conferences or webinars or events, another person might shy away from it and be terrified the thought of getting up on stage and speaking to an audience about a topic. So maybe they're a better writer, or maybe their firm is just sending them to that conference to do the networking because that is what they excel at. So you don't have to be, a star in all three. Focus where you're comfortable.
I love that, Katie. I think it's one of the biggest challenges marketers have right now is engaging subject matter experts and thought leaders in the organization, but doing so in a way that really is taking into account the skills of the person that you're working with, the preferences. Um, when we do our visible expert program, Katie, I think you and I have gone through this with a number of clients. We always sit down one-on-one with the thought leaders, and they always say the most interesting things about their experience working with the marketing team. They're like, "Yeah, I've been a part of this association for 10 years, but nobody's ever asked me about it. Is this a part of the marketing program?" It's like, well, yes, it is. And helping to fuel that is a really big opportunity. And you had other people. I remember we talked to one gentleman who was like, "Yeah, I'm halfway through a book right now, but I haven't really told anybody about it." It's like, okay, well, that's a really interesting opportunity.
It is.
So when you get down to that expert level, you might have to sit down with the experts and actually interview them and talk to them about what kind of things are you passionate about? What associations have you worked with in the past? It could be great for onboarding, more experienced professionals too that are moving into your organizations. Maybe there's some opportunities for some new thought leaders that are coming into the organization. I go back to that idea with M&A as well. When your firm is acquiring another company, have you done the due diligence to understand who are the subject matter experts at this other company? And how is your marketing team going to partner with either those marketing resources or those experts to keep them on that path of developing their personal brand? I think there's so much there to unpack.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Austin, I think you picked
Yeah.
maybe a great landing point for this conversation. When you're thinking about AEC experts, there were a lot of seller doers. There were a lot of folks that just had got a lot of things going on, right? A lot of things to focus on. That may be the driver for not sharing, the book you're reading or what you're doing or what have you. But, what you just shared, tapping into that passion, the why, Katie, what you shared about, finding those natural points that really work well with a specific expert and then thinking about the entire team, how they come together, that can help to make this kind of approach actually fun and integrated with the rest of their work. It's essentially finding the places where your experts are most comfortable, most passionate, and helping them establish a platform where they're going to get more reinforcement and the business is going to get more reinforcement. So you've got that qualitative, my audiences are actually valuing what I have to say, what drives me, and measuring the impact of these techniques can share back to the experts and their leadership how these efforts pay off for the business. So I think you cover both of those bases, you're going to be following a path that has been trailblazed by some of the fastest growing, most profitable organizations in our industry. And don't forget all this time of change, things are shifting all the time. New competitors are popping up in backyards daily, or you may be the competitor showing up in someone else's backyard, how are you leveraging teams? How are you bringing them together and using some of these techniques? I'll go back to where I started. I think it's a time of great opportunity for those that have focus and can see the path within all of that, because that's what our clients are looking for too.
Great thoughts. Well, I will leave our viewers here with one last thought. One other finding that we saw in the high growth study this year is that the fastest growing firms are investing more in marketing. It's almost, I think it's actually says like twice as much in marketing than the slower growing firms. So there is some correlation there to marketing investment and growth. And I think the question is from there, what do you do? How do you increase investment and what other areas should you look into? I think this is a great reason why our high growth study can play a role and be a top resource for you on that journey. If you have any questions or if you want to talk to a team member about our research or talk with Carl and Katie, connect with us on LinkedIn. But we hope that all the data and research that we provide helps you in your journey to help grow your architecture, engineering, or construction firm. So for Carl, Katie, and myself, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.